So welcome everyone. This is Manuel Martinez with a mini teaser for the Career Downloads podcast. Normally I bring on a different guest, I hit the refresh button, but this time we're going to do something a little different. It's going to be a big refresh where I have a guest that's going to go through and ask me some questions focused around the podcast and kind of how it came about. Because it's one of the things that, he realized, and as he brought it to my attention, that a lot of people don't know how this came about. So I thought it'd be a great opportunity to kind of put myself in the hot seat. So with that, I'll introduce John McGugan and he can take it from here.
Manuel Martinez, how are you doing?
I'm doing well.
So the tables have turned and now I get to ask you the questions. So I asked to be able to come here and do this real quick because I am a huge fan of the Career Downloads podcast. The reason why I'm a big fan of it is because every time I listen to one of your interviews, I learn something. And I don't just learn something that I don't know. I learn something that I can actually take and apply to my own career, which I know obviously is the intent of the podcast, is to help those in the community. So I want to learn a little bit more about the podcast itself, and I have 5 burning questions for you. So here's the first question. A little wordy, but we'll get to it. So there are millions of podcasts out there, and yours is one of them. But this obviously started with an idea that you had. You're just a guy with a family living in your house, doing your job, and now you're doing a podcast at the time of this, 40 plus interviews. And so how did the idea of doing a podcast start with you?
So the idea came about actually with a good friend of mine. So Jake Izumi, I will make sure that he gets credit for coming up with this, even though I know he's going to shy away. But I have been a part-time instructor for about 7 years now. And in the last few years, I got into mentorship, formal mentorship programs at my places of employment. And Jake actually got me introduced to an external one, and it's called the Women's Empowerment Institute. So what they do is they take women who are re-entering the career field, or maybe they're transitioning, they put them through an AWS boot camp, and then they pair them up with an AWS mentor to help them on, it could be anything from earning a certification, to helping them prepare for job interviews, to developing hands-on skills. And in our conversations with our mentees, we would run into issues. He had a mentee that he wasn't sure how to kind of help her in what she was looking for. She had gone through the boot camp. She was struggling with she understood the concepts, but getting that hands-on knowledge, she was struggling. So I had suggested, and if you review episode number 2 with Janetta Dunbar, she talks about buying a Udemy course, going through it and learning how everything was built, and then tweaking it to her liking, and that ended up landing her a job with Sony PlayStation. So I gave him a condensed version of that, said, hey, why don't you know the technology, you know what would work, find her a course that's, $10 to build a basic website, but that has AWS technology on the back end. He was like, that's a great idea. How did you come up with that? Well, I happen to know part of that story from Janetta. Time goes on, there was another situation, and, I'll kind of summarize it here, but same thing. I gave him another piece of advice, and he was like, man, is that something you did? I was like, no, as a matter of fact, my friend John did that. And eventually he said, you need to find a way to amplify this information. So we brainstormed, me and him would meet monthly, during our work hours. And we tried, maybe blogs, maybe writing it down. At some point he said, maybe create a video explaining, what you're telling me. But it didn't feel right because it's not my story, right? I didn't go through those experiences. And eventually he came up with the idea, and we kind of jointly was like, well, let's do a podcast. And I asked him to join me in building this, and he wanted nothing to do with it. So then I was like, well, I'm not going to do this on my own. Similar to what you said, there's a number of podcasts out there. Somebody's already doing something similar. They have to be. And I couldn't find anything.
I couldn't either.
The ones I did find had CEOs, CIOs, right? Like Mark Cuban. And I felt like the issue there is sometimes people can't relate. Whereas like you and me, like, oh, this is just a regular person that is going through their career. This is their experience. And I wanted to find people in diverse industries, diverse roles, diverse, different stages in their career, so that they could go through and there's going to be somebody that they identify with, somebody that they resonate with. There's going to be a piece of their story that's going to say, man, I get that. Oh, they can do it. I can do it as well. So that's eventually what led to the idea. And, eventually I slowly started to make it a reality.
Look, if you can nail down Mark Cuban for an interview, I would take it. But one of the things that I like about the Career Downloads podcast is that it is normal, real people. It's their stories. It's where they started, how they developed their skills, and how they utilize those. So kudos to you, because I listen to a lot of podcasts because I travel by vehicle for a living, and it's what I do to pass the time. So again, great. It's a great idea. And I believe that so far the success has been amazing. My next question for you is about the ride on the podcast. So if you consider the podcast like a car, how was the ride in the car when you started? And how is that ride today? Meaning the road might have been bumpy a few places, but so what have you learned and how have you grown? You can be as specific or as general as you want, but.
So I'll say that using that analogy, to start off, it was smooth as far as production goes. It was like riding in a limo. And what that means is I was in the back and I had somebody else driving. The idea, once I went through, I have a neighbor who's a sound engineer, and I started asking him questions like, hey, I'm thinking about doing podcasts, started asking him about microphones, because I knew that was his area. He just happened to have a partner that was getting ready to kind of launch a podcast studio. And he said, why don't you come try and check it out? I know you're in IT, to kind of get you started. Maybe we can try trade services. You can do some IT work for us that we need done, and in exchange, you get some, recording time and production. I thought it was a perfect idea, win-win. And, at some point, if this took off, I'll figure out how to kind of be able to pay or, what other services I could do. And it was great. All I did is I contacted 6 people, got them to commit to coming in and being on the show, even though it was very hard for me to articulate what I was trying to do exactly, and I had an idea, I didn't really know, but again, I sat in, all I had to do was show up, they would mic me up, similar to I do to my guests, they sit down, and I just started asking them questions. The first couple ones, and I apologize to those guests, because at some point I want to bring them on, I was not very good, and this is at this point where I would say I'm starting to get out of that limo, and I'm picking up a used 25-year-old Honda Civic. I don't know how to ask questions. I listened to podcasts. I thought, okay, I'm going to be curious, and I genuinely want to know about people's careers. And I thought I have to go linear. So I was trying to go through from job to job, and the first couple episodes were too long, right? It was 2 hours because I wanted to hit everything. So it was pretty bumpy. I realized that the auto captions were terrible, right? I don't like that. Yeah. I want to be able to understand what somebody's saying, because maybe, I have attention deficit disorder. And sometimes for me to pay attention, I need to read, even though I'm listening to what they're saying. And I realized, oh my God, the questions I'm asking are terrible, right? So, oh my gosh, the amount of uhs, ums, likes, rights, like filler words, I thought that I wasn't doing that as much. Well, in my Honda Civic, and at this point, from the outside, it had a brand new shiny coat of paint, but on the inside, the AC doesn't work, the windows don't roll down. So it's starting to get pretty rough. And I was okay with that because I thought I can only get better. It wasn't economically feasible for me to continue at the podcast studio, and decided, all right, I enjoy this. I felt like each episode I was asking better questions. I was learning something similar to like what you mentioned. I was learning something that I could take into my own career and use that information. And I was like, I genuinely love this. I know I'm doing it to help others, but I'm getting probably at times I felt like more in return, but wanted to keep doing it. So I figured out, okay, well, how do I kind of start piecing this together? And maybe I will upgrade and buy my, a couple repairs. So that started buying equipment, and, the first couple of episodes, and you've seen enough of them, like they were okay. The first 6 were production, quality. And then it kind of, the cameras were decent, but understanding how lighting works, how to edit videos, how to color grade. So, I was buying parts to repair my Honda Civic. And then eventually, over time, I was like, okay, I think I got this. I can move from the Honda Civic that's 25 years old to one that's maybe only 10 years old. So it's bumpy, but at least now I have working air, the windows roll down. It maybe doesn't have that shiny new coat of paint. I try to do my best to make this presentable and give value to others, but that's been the journey, is just learning as I go. And, one of the things that I had to be okay with very early on is knowing that it's not going to be great. And that's okay. And that's something that one of the workers at the studio said. She's like, hey, this is going to be good because there's going to be people like you that are going to watch it sequentially. And they're going to see that progression and that growth, and they're going to invest in you. Like, it doesn't have to be perfect. Thinking about my own career, did I know everything I know now at the start? No. But you build on it. You take bits and pieces, and you're like, okay, for the next one, I'll do this. I'll get this a little bit better, and I'll do this a little bit better. And I don't rewatch every episode, but I do go back at least 10 or 15 so I feel like there's enough, and I go back and I'm like, oh, okay, I am getting better. There is something that's improving. So,
in the benefit that you have is that even though you're literally taking a dream and working on it, and even though, yes, you're working on the nuts and the bolts and the sound and the video and the lighting, and you're trying to get all that done, but you have good content. So it may not look the best, it may not sound the best, but what you're getting from your guests is actually really good. And that's why I keep listening. So I appreciate that. And I'm grateful that, at the time of this, you're 40 plus episodes in. So now the next question, and by the way, he does not know what I'm going to ask. These questions are for the first time. I didn't share them. So 40 plus episodes in, let's talk about expectations versus the reality. So when you started, what were you expecting, and have your expectations been surpassed? Are you happy with what you're doing? I know we can all get better, but the reality of what you're doing today, do you like it? Is it where you want it to be?
I would say that the expectation versus the reality. So my expectation is, I'll be honest with you, I wasn't sure that it would get as far as it is now. I mentioned it already, I have ADHD, and I thought, okay, it's cool, it's novel, I'm going to enjoy it for a little bit, and it's going to taper off. I had a goal of, I will stick with it. So I started this in July of 2024. We're now in June. And I thought to myself, okay, I'll make the investment. I'll buy decent equipment that I think has good resale value.
So you can dump it off if you want to stop.
Exactly. And I committed to 6 months. I was like, you know what? I'm going to do this for 6 months. I'm going to record enough episodes, to kind of do that. And see if I continue to enjoy it, and see if people even care about it, right? I was doing it for me. I was trying to provide value to others. So when I say for me, I was doing it for me to be able to hand off to other people, to mentees, and just wasn't sure how far it would go beyond that.
I'm sure that you knew getting into it, though, that you knew that initially you weren't going to have a lot of people that were going to look at it, but that you knew that you would have to grow that to get an audience.
Yeah, I knew I was going to have to grow it, but I didn't know. I wasn't looking necessarily for a huge growth, but I was looking for some sort of feedback. And I'll be honest, initially I wasn't getting that. And it's hard, good or bad, right? So to me, no feedback to me was bad feedback, because nobody's telling you it's good or it's bad. It wasn't until they started getting published, a couple people, I started sharing clips of it on LinkedIn, and then I noticed that the following would start to grow on the LinkedIn presence. And that's probably the biggest platform. So I do put them on YouTube and everywhere else. Probably should check the audio stats and that a lot more. But my primary thing is, this is career related. LinkedIn is a career platform. And I just try to find a way to improve there. And when I saw the following growing there, which eventually led to more people following the full episodes, it took a while, obviously, to build that body of work to say, oh, okay, well, there's enough here for me to see. You have 6 episodes, you're sharing, 6 or 7 clips, 30-second clips. It's tough. And trying to get people to give feedback. And you can't get feedback if you're not asking for it. And that was another reality check for me. Is I thought, okay, well, people start to see it, it'll kind of grow on its own, and people will just tell me I like it, I don't like it, because I was like, no, people will give you their opinions whether you want them or not. But I wasn't getting them. So again, the reality is I had to learn to go through and promote what I was doing in a way that I felt comfortable doing. Now the reality is I have enjoyed doing this so much. I think I would, even if not a single, let's say it doesn't grow anymore. I mean, I would like it to, because it's taking time away from my family, and there's costs involved. I would like to be able to make enough money to cover those costs of, maybe I can hire a editor to help me out. I can hire some additional people. But the conversations I get to have and genuine relationships, it's not just my friends and people that know me, because that was very humbling for people to say that the only reason that they would come on the show was because of me. Like Janetta, I'll come back to her. She, I tried to get her to do something similar with something else, and she's like, no. I don't like to be the on-air talent. I'll help you behind the scenes. I'm like, but you did this one. I did it for you. Right? I did it to help you out because I think what you're doing is great. So that was a reality that I just wasn't expecting. I didn't realize the amount of past relationships that were willing to help me, and a lot of the ones that I started to make. Like, there's a number of guests that prior to the podcast, I didn't know these people, or I didn't have a relationship. Maybe I knew who they were, but that was it. But talking to them, meeting them at events, getting to know their story, and kind of relating my own experiences, right? So that helped me ask better questions. Like, that sounds great. Here would be my experience, or I would imagine this. So it's an opportunity to develop more meaningful relationships, which I don't think I expected early on. And now, like I said, we're getting close to, next year will be July, so it'll be close to that 1 year mark.
To the 1 year mark.
Yeah.
You've answered one part of my next question, which would be, name 2 or 3 things that you have learned throughout this process. I think one would be, who your friends are, and that you've made an impact in the marketplace, obviously, because you have people who are now coming to you saying, I like what you do. I think I have a story. I'd like to be a part of that. And of course, This is not a paid platform. People volunteer their time to come here and do it and to share their experiences. And so beyond the connection with the guests that you've had, maybe a thing or two or three that you have learned, maybe either about doing the equipment, the process, the production, or maybe just in general things that you've learned that have benefited your life or your business?
Ooh, that's a good question. So I would say kind of some of the biggest things that I've learned is it's really easy to learn the basics very fast, right? I can research all day and it's pretty quick. I mean, especially now, with anything, you can go on YouTube, you can read a book, you'll pick up enough to get started. And it might give you a false sense of reality that like, oh, I've got this. I figured out cameras. Oh, this is easy enough. It's not. It's really that last probably 25% that makes the difference. Like you mentioned it before, like learning the audio, learning lighting. So the biggest thing that I think I have learned out of this, or it was probably a reminder, is as much as there's videos, there's free materials to learn, nothing replaces paid experts. And by paid experts, it's people who have done this. So one of the things I learned with my lighting is I reached out to somebody who was a professional photographer and asked them, I was like, hey, I'm curious, I know it's lighting, here's what I'm doing, and showed him a couple of videos, and he was like, I think we can do better. I offered to pay him, but again, having that relationship, this is a paid professional that does this, come in and they looked at the setup and said, okay, I see what you're doing, and we're able to go through, and there's a lot of aesthetics that I hadn't thought about. So if we look at videos before, there's the plant right now on this side, and it's now being lit from the bottom. Before it was on this side, and they were like, visually, sometimes the plant is here. He goes, and it's just filling space. Hey, you're lighting, you're not getting the right shadows. I was like, oh, I thought I was. Nope, and it's small tweaks, right? That last 20%, it doesn't take much. He's like, move the lighting just a little bit, turn down the brightness or turned it up. And I was like, oh my gosh, like night and day. That saved me a lot of post-processing, right? So again, investing in professionals or reaching out to them to be able to say, hey, I don't know, help me. And, I would do that in my career in tech. No, I don't know about this service. Tell me about it. Doing the same here. I think the other thing that I've learned is really being intentional with your practice. And well, what does that mean? It's easy to just throw on lights and go, and I'll just figure it out and ask questions. So I started researching. Like, I don't know what questions I'm going to ask, but I started consuming podcasts that I liked and tried to figure out what is it that I like about the host. What types of questions are they? How are they phrasing their questions? So that was a big thing that I learned is, okay, I'm asking questions, but sometimes I'm not getting the answer. And not that I'm looking for a specific answer, but I'm not getting the area that I was looking for. Well, my questions are too broad. I'm not giving them context. There's a number of different things. So really being intentional with the types of questions. So again, practicing and not practicing, but really understanding, okay, I have to be intentional with reviewing and understanding the types of questions. The other thing is, and I had a number of guests that talked about it, was how Toastmasters changed them and helped them with their, work communication. Yep. I looked into it, and I probably 2 months ago joined. And even that practice of writing a speech and taking pauses and understanding, how communication works. So now I've gotten down another rabbit hole of, verbal communication versus nonverbal. How do I let the guests know that I'm interested and, let them know that, I want to interrupt them without saying, hey, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, and you have to, you don't want it to end up looking like a news program where you're cutting people off to get to the point because you're running out of time, because you're not running out of time. But it's also important to know that you're not going to be the best interviewer on the first, interview. You've got to put the time in. And one of the things that you and I talked about off air earlier is something that most NFL teams haven't figured out yet, is that you can have the greatest quarterback in the history of the NFL, but if you don't have an ensemble around that person, you're never going to the Super Bowl. And so when it comes to lighting and sound and video and editing, and you mentioned closed captioning, it's an ensemble that makes it work. It's not that you're in $1 million studio, and it's not that you've got a $20,000 camera. It's that it all works together. And I think, for those watching, I think you've got it together. It's great. So my last question for you, before I ask the audience a question, ask you one more. So let's talk about the future. Posting date now, you're 40 plus episodes. You got a season coming out this year. So is there anything we can expect from you as far as different types of guests, maybe different industries? Are you thinking of branching out to do like video, online video from people in other regions? Or are you still going to stay in person? What's the future of career downloads look like today?
Well, I have, for better or worse, started to set bigger expectations. So one of the things, I started with people in the tech industry because that's the relationships that I have. Those are the people I know, and it's what's comfortable. I think now to try and break out of that comfort level, right? So initially, creating videos and doing interviews, that was out of my comfort zone. I've gotten pretty comfortable with this. I know while guest experiences are different, they're in the tech industry. Like I know what types of questions to ask to get the information I'm looking for. I have thought about slowly trying to branch it out maybe into other industries and being able to ask other professionals in different careers. Like maybe not everybody wants to be in tech, right? But trying to find out what does that look like? Who are those people? I've started also doing a little bit of side work of doing video production for other people. Doing interview style, like messages from different angles. Maybe even doing promo videos. Part of the reason that I did that is, again, I went back to practicing. I want to be more intentional and practice. I actually helped somebody go and do a wedding.
Oh, wow.
Which is, I never thought I would ever do a wedding, and I don't know that that's something I'm going to pursue.
There's some pressure there because you can't reshoot a wedding. I mean, you get one shot. And
that was part of the reason I did it. I was like, you get one shot, but you have to, it did help me bring out something more creative and said, okay, how creative can I really get with, an interview style podcast? Well, actually, after going and doing some of these different events, like doing a wedding, doing, some of these promotional videos, I've started to unlock ideas for how I can grow this. I like change. I know most people don't. I know that they like a consistency of, hey, this is the way the set looks. But doing that, I think I have additional ways that I want to set up how the guests look, maybe set up how the cameras look. Maybe I want to change the lighting a little bit. Maybe I want to add in a different prop instead of having the same plant in the background. Playing with field of depth. Well, what if I move them this way? Would that give me a more blurry background? Where I've had a couple of people like, oh, is that an AI generated? Like, it's not. It's understanding how the camera works, field of depth. So, that's one area. So I've started branching that out to improve this and unlock creativity instead of just being comfortable with, okay, well, this is what it looks like. I'm just going to rinse and repeat.
Look, in a world where people are doing Teams meetings with simulated fake backgrounds, my boss keeps putting himself on the USS Enterprise when we're doing meetings. I'm like, in a world of fake backgrounds, I love your set. I think it's very timely and it's great. I'm Really glad to hear that you're moving forward with Career Downloads, another season coming out. And I will say that I'm excited. And for the audience who are listening to this today, you heard Manuel say it. He wants feedback. So, two-part question for you guys. Number one, what do you like about Career Downloads, or what do you think could be done better? Comments down below. Also, if there's another industry that you think that you would like to learn about, maybe an industry that relies on tech to be successful, put some of those ideas in the comments down below at all. I'm sure that you would love to get some of that feedback. This is the time and the place right down below there. Do it and give it out. And
yeah, and the last thing that I want to share is my other last ambition is part of me going out and doing other areas is I did a couple, like 2 or 3 episodes where I was out at a team meeting and actually filmed them, let's say on location. It was somewhere else. It was actually in a hotel room, right? Because I was there with coworkers and filmed them there. But that unlocked the other idea, and kind of why I started branching out is, okay, this is easy to set up. I can come in, I know what settings I need to set my cameras, my lights, distance of chairs. And to be able to unlock more people, be it more industries, or maybe even just more tech in just different cities and states, is at some point, my ambition is I would love to go on location and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to be in Chicago. Maybe or you know what? You're currently staying in
Kansas City area
Kansas
right
City.
now, if you're in the Midwest.
Right. So if I were to go to the Kansas City area and say, hey, John, I'm going to be in the Kansas City area. Are there 4 or 5 people that you can kind of help put me in contact with? Or maybe I know 2, I just need an additional people so that I can go through for a weekend, right? And just make a weekend trip out of it, knock a couple of these out. And again, maybe that's the variety that I want to do too. But again, I want to grow this outside of just the Vegas market. Maybe at some point I do like virtual, but you mentioned it, right? Everybody is tired of the kind of the Zoom, the fake backgrounds. I can't control the quality, and I'm a little OCD in that, whereas like I want to be able to control, I can't control their internet connection or, what might happen. It might be a possibility because I'm sure I'm missing out on great guests, but maybe the fix is at some point I can go to them and do that.
You and I talked about it earlier. The video and the audio quality is horrible, but convention and trade shows, that is a place where you can get a lot of people in a short amount of time, and you can get some really good subject matter experts in the field, but you just can't do it on the floor because you got background noise, you got bad lighting, and it's hard. But I'm grateful to know that you're thinking of the future, that you've got more ideas planned, and that I love IT. My company's based on IT. It's what we use. It's our platform. I'm all about anything, but there is a segment of people out there that want to learn about different things. And the way that the Career Downloads podcast is formatted is that no matter what the subject matter expert is, you learn something. And I think that there are a lot of guests out there that can bring some value to the people through your interviews. I think you do a great job. I'm excited to watch the new season. I'm excited to read all the comments on the bottom of this. And Manuel, it's been a pleasure to spend some time with you today and to get to know you. I'll let you wrap it up, but thank you for letting me come by and interview you today.
It was definitely interesting, right? I get to get a small sense of kind of what my guests go through. Questions aren't hard, right? It's things that my experiences, and I'm grateful that you kind of decided that you want to do this, and hopefully this helps people understand kind of the origin story and what I'm trying to do with this, as opposed to, well, these are just interviews to help me maybe get a tidbit or 2 about a career and learn about somebody else in the process. So with that, again, thank you everybody for watching and listening, and again, continue to plug in and download the knowledge. And hopefully, you get a little bit better sense of me and what I'm trying to do, and hopefully some of the improvements that will be coming in the following seasons. So with that, thank you again.